49ers defeat the Eagles 42-19. What a win. This was as much of a statement as you could have made in Philadelphia for the 49ers. This was the game of the week, one of the games of the year. If you want to call Chiefs and Eagles game of the year, it's a Super Bowl rematch, you can. For us, the 49ers, this was the game of the year. Rematch of the championship game, the game we didn't really even get to see. And the 49ers don't only win, but they win big. They dominated the Eagles. I'm going to just go through this game summary here. It didn't start off well at all, and the Eagles looked on top of it. They were sharp. The weather, fortunately, was not much of a factor. It's a very light rain. I mean, it was almost more of just that kind of mist of a drizzle. And that's what you hope for. I don't want to see a heavy rain game. I don't want to see snow. Little weather is welcome. Just as long as it doesn't really alter the game. You can still have a clean game. So you have a cold game that's damp. Great. But the Eagles started off on their first two possessions with 2 field goals. And this was really the story of the game. As it didn't look good. They went up and down the field twice, but the 49ers defense held. They didn't give in. And the Eagles could not push it in. And as ugly as it started off early, the 49ers were able to hold the Eagles and keep them to 3rd and longs, so then they wouldn't have the 3rd and short or the 4th and short. And I remember sitting there saying, okay, it's only 6-0. If the 49ers could just get something going on offense, because the first 2 possessions were 3 and outs, and it looked bad. I mean, Purdy looked uncomfortable. They were going backwards. They had -6 yards in the first quarter of offense. -6 yards. But the second quarter completely changed. I mean, you want to talk about a shift in adjustments. Well, the 49ers made it. And, I thought they would play better as the game went on. But, if you couldn't score and score soon and answer, it was going to be a loss. But the 49ers responded. In the second quarter, there were some big plays. And the 49ers were able to take advantage of some of the matchups that we highlighted, which we'll get into a little later. But Brandon Aiyuk, he had the first touchdown, which concerned us some because I thought maybe they might overturn that. I mean, a catch is a catch. I mean, if the ball moves just a little, it doesn't mean it's not a catch. Well, that first touchdown was reviewed. It was upheld. It was 7-6. 49ers were able to get the ball back a second time in the second quarter, and it was a second touchdown, another touchdown. Christian McCaffrey, 2-yard run, and the 49ers are up 14-6 at halftime. And the Eagles were not left with enough time before halftime to do anything. And then the 49ers would get the ball back after halftime, and they score right away. Deebo Samuel was a 12-yard run, 21-6. Now, the next possession for the Eagles, this was interesting. And this is when the 49ers made a couple of mistakes. There was a face mask on special teams on the kickoff, which was free 15 yards the 49ers gave him. And then there was the Dre Greenlaw ejection. I love the intensity that Greenlaw brings, and we'll talk about that more. But it just can't happen. Just can't happen out there. And there the Eagles get their touchdown. They finally get in. And that was in the third quarter. So, I mean, you look at the defense, it didn't look good early. And they didn't surrender a touchdown until, the third quarter. There. It's 21-13. And things are starting to look a lot closer and more concerning. But take a deep breath, because the 49ers responded and they never allow the Eagles to get any closer. Deebo Samuel, 48-yard touchdown pass on the next possession. Purdy to Deebo, and that was the most excited I was all season. I saw him get in the open field. I was just like, go, go, go! And he went the distance. 28-13. And at that point, you're like, the Eagles can't stop us. That's 4 straight touchdowns on offense. 4 straight drives, 4 touchdowns, 28-13. And this game was going to be different. And the Eagles are not going to come back. And can I say that's the beauty of having Brock Purdy over Jimmy Garoppolo? Fourth quarter, Juwan Jennings, 18-yard touchdown, and that was quite a play. 35-13. At that point, it was just put out of reach. The Eagles would get a touchdown. Devontae Smith from Hurts, but the 2-point conversion was failed, so it's 35-19. And perhaps my favorite part of the game was, instead of the 49ers doing the usual Kyle Shanahan move, where they're just going to run the ball and they're going to be ultra conservative and shut things down. And I mean, the game was over at that point. They threw that wide receiver screenplay with Deebo, and then he goes off for a 46-yard touchdown. I mean, that wasn't exactly, I think, how it was designed to go for a touchdown of 46 yards, but to, pick up the first down and, officially end it. That's what they're going for. They make it 42-19. Wow. 42-19 in Philadelphia. And that's not what you usually see by the Shanahan teams. Is, one of the things I brought up in the preview was, you're seeing an ultra-aggressive coach in Sirianni versus, I would say, a conservative coach in Kyle Shanahan. How are these two styles going to play out here? Well, Shanahan actually kept the foot on the gas. Thank you. Man, was that nice to see, and not to see any drama, or nice to see the Eagles not get within a touchdown again. Let's get into the details of this and some of the stats. Brock Purdy, 19 of 27, 314 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, 148.8 passer rating. Jalen Hurts, he played well on the other side. 26 of 45, 298 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. I mean, he did leave for a short time because he had to go in concussion. I mean, he had to get checked for the concussion under the tent. I wonder if he really had a concussion, though. Makes you wonder, because he came back out very fast. Christian McCaffrey, 17 carries, 93 yards average, 5.5 yards, a touchdown. He also had 3 receptions for 40 yards and that sweet 33-yarder that Purdy connected him with. Deebo had 3 carries for 22 yards, 1 touchdown on the ground. He had 2 touchdowns in the air. I mean, 4 receptions, 116 yards for him. I feel like Deebo talks a little too much. Maybe he's on the Kay Adams show a lot. And he talked, after the championship game last year and said, wow, things would have been different. And I believe he made the statement that the 49ers would have won if Purdy didn't get hurt. And I'm tired of the talking. I mean, that goes for both sides. I mean, whether it be Reddick or Debo, let's just see how it plays out on the field, guys. Quit talking. He stepped up, and he saved his best game of the year for the most important game of the year. And I mean, I even bashed Debo at the time, saying, it feels like he's done more running with his mouth than running on the field. He hasn't had very many big games, and he hasn't lived up to his contract. But this is the Debo Samuel that we paid. This is the player that we saw in 2021 in this game. And what a game to do it in. And I want to see more of this. I don't want to see him running east to west. I want to see him going north to south. And I want to see more of those wide receiver screens, because once he got in that first touchdown in the air, once he got in the middle of the field, it's just like, no one's tackling him. He's going. And he looked lighter and faster, but of course at the same time strong. And I know Olsen pointed out that maybe there was a hold late on that play. I think I saw some holds by the Eagles' offensive line in this game that were non-calls too. I won't get into that, but 42-19 speaks for itself. George Kittle had a good first half. I mean, he had a 32-yard play that was really one of the plays that got the offense going. As I thought, this didn't play out how I thought it would on offense. The 49ers were to succeed. I know they had to run enough, but I thought it was going to be McCaffrey and Debo in the McCaffrey and Kittle in the passing attack. And yeah, they had some big plays, and Kittle had a solid game, but Debo was the star, and then secondarily McCaffrey just making an argument for being an MVP himself with the kind of year. He went over 1,000 yards. Brandon Ayuk, just solid. 5 receptions, 46 yards, 1 touchdown. And then a guy who we haven't heard much from at all, and that's Jauan Jennings. 3 receptions, 44 yards. He had the 1 touchdown. He had a couple big catches. He has a very quiet season. A.J. Brown had a couple of big plays early. After that, they did a good job controlling him. 8 receptions, 114 yards receiving. Devontae Smith, also 9 receptions, 96 yards. I think it would have helped, sure, if they had Goddard in there. But for the most part, the 49ers defense, the pass rush did not get there quite like I would have expected. I would have expected a little bit more. I was surprised we didn't see a whole lot of Chase Young, with the other starting 3 being Bosa, Hargrave, and Armstead. Lane Johnson just about shut Nick Bosa down, though, again. And I would have liked to seen maybe some more stunts with Bosa. But I know part of that also was a strategy of still maintaining the edge and not allowing him to get outside. I mean, he can still hurt you, sure, in the pocket. Hurting you. But he's best when he's on the move. He's so good throwing on the run, but then also getting out to the edge. But that was one of the areas the 49ers did such a great job, was they did limit what Hurts was able to do on the ground himself. I mean, he is dangerous. It's not like he's going to run like a Michael Vick or Lamar Jackson, but you got to respect him out there to take off, or even just 10, 15-yard runs that add up. Just 7 carries for 20 yards. He did have the 1 touchdown, but the 49ers won. They made some adjustments by forcing them into 3rd and longs and 4th and longs, or fourth and unmanageable. So it wasn't 4th and 1, it wasn't 4th and 2, but more the 4th and 4s, the 4th and 5s. That's, you can't go on those. You can't do your brotherly shove or your push when it's 4th and 4, 4th and 5. Maybe it's 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. That will work. But the 49ers just fought them. That was it. They fought them. And I got to give it up to the secondary because the pass rush, they got a little bit better as the game went on. I mean, Bosa got a little more pressure. Some of the others got some more pressure. I mean, Javon Hargrave actually got credit for 2 sacks in this game. Wow, who would have seen that coming? Charvarius Ward. Yeah, he had a couple bad plays, but he had a big breakup in the end zone early. It could have been a touchdown. Jair Brown, the rookie, I got to mention him because he did take a bad angle on that first big play to Brown, but the rest of the game, good. I mean, again, the fact that we didn't have to even have it mentioned like so many jobs, when nothing gets said, it means you're doing your job. And that's exactly what he did. Linebackers didn't have, well, besides what happened with Dre Greenlaw, they had a good game. Didn't have a monster game. But they did their job. The D-line did their job. The linebackers did their job by not allowing Hurts, because Hurts can run either getting past the edge or he can find the gaps up front. He can. But the 49ers were the team that actually, won in the trenches. It was coming down to who would actually win in the trenches, and the 49ers offensive line did. They did enough. It didn't look good when Reddick got that first sack almost right away, and we're like, oh, wow, here we go again. But McKivitz held up as the game went on, and they gave Purdy enough time. And the 49ers started playing to their strengths. That's what I want to talk about. They got Deebo Samuel out in space, and then they start running to the left side with Christian McCaffrey, and the Eagles had absolutely no answer for that. Run behind Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, and then let Kittle and Juszczyk block. The Eagles just couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't. And it was one of those things, I think Kyle Shanahan gets too cute a lot of times. He gets away from what's working. And if it's working so well, stay with it and make your opponent stop you. And I tip my cap to Kyle Shanahan. Today was a day where he learned a lot of lessons, I think, from the past. And he put his hard losses, I hope, the failures of those losses, he's buried them, because I saw some more aggressiveness out of him. I saw him put his foot on the gas and keep it there and hold it down. And I saw him continuing to attack the other team, in this case on offense, with the running game, until they could prove they could stop you, which they couldn't, which has been a major complaint over the years by me. It just felt like in those first 2 possessions, he was just letting the offense just take what the defense was giving them. Oh, I don't like that. We're playing an offensive game. We're playing an offensive league. That shouldn't be. But the story of the offense was Brock Purdy, right? I mean, as good as Deebo was and McCaffrey was, this game meant more to Brock Purdy than anyone. I mean, I repeat the numbers: 19 of 27. I mean, it was a terrible first quarter. But you know what? No turnovers, no fumbles, no interceptions. 19 of 27, 314 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, 148.6. And for all those who said, well, it wouldn't have mattered very much if Purdy would have been in that game last year. Really? Maybe the 49ers lose, but I bet it would have been a very close game. And the Eagles, as a 10-1 team, got crushed on their own field. I mean, their fans left early, and the stadium was empty, and all the 49er fans that were there filled the lower deck. The better team was clearly the 49ers. It wasn't even close. I respect the Eagles. They're still the number one seed. And what they did last year, what they've done this year. But on paper, the 49ers are the better team. Jalen Hurts was good. He is very good. The better quarterback this season has been Brock Purdy. The better quarterback today was Brock Purdy. And he was the MVP of this game. He's right there as one of the top three, at least quarterbacks, to be MVP in the whole league. I mean, I would say he's at the front of the list. He's at the front of the line right now, Brock Purdy. And what a story it is, as he proved to the whole NFL world that, I'm not just a system quarterback. I can't get it done on the big stage. Or this is one I couldn't get. I can't play in the rain, just because the Browns game was a little wet and he didn't play too well against that defense. That is a very good defense. And then, he's had a banged up Trent Williams, and Debo was out. And talk about overreactions. I mean, so much of this is overreactions. And even though the 49ers won this game, and I was thrilled as a fan, I'm not just sitting there saying, without a doubt, they're the best team in the NFL. It's not even close. No, I'm saying, yeah, right now they are the best team, but the Eagles are still close. And if they played each other again in the playoffs, which is likely, I would expect a much closer game. And I am never going to completely overreact to one game. You take the whole season into account. And when I'm evaluating quarterbacks, I don't look at one season either. With Brock Purdy, I'd take into consideration last season and this season, just like with Hurts. But this season means so much more because he's more experienced and he's so young. We see now what he can do with a full season, and those doubters out there acted like, he couldn't improve, he couldn't get any better, and last year was just a fluke. Well, what can you say now? His completion percentage, his quarterback rating, his touchdown interception ratio, and maybe most important is he just wins. He just wins. And that's also my compliment of Jalen Hurts. He does the same thing, and he has done the same thing. Say whatever you want. These two quarterbacks win. And let's give some credit to Kyle Shanahan. I'm fairly critical of him. This was one of his greatest coaching efforts. He had his team prepared. They didn't freak out. They didn't lose it after the slow start. They kept calm. They kept composed. And they got it done. And this was a physical game. That's another thing. With these two teams, very physical, but the 49ers were more physical. I mean, they're just on a whole nother level than the Cowboys altogether. The Eagles are close to the 49ers, but this is the most physical team in football. I want to mention this again. They had 6 straight touchdowns on offense. 6 straight touchdowns. The 49ers put up 42 points on the Cowboys and the Eagles, who outside the 49ers are considered the 2 best teams in the NFC. That makes the case for being the best team in the NFL in your power rankings. And I expect in whatever power rankings I see in the next day or two on ESPN or Bleacher Report, the 49ers should be number 1. Another player I want to point out and give some credit to is Ambry Thomas. 3 passes defensed. Very good game for him. And getting back to the offensive line, I mean, it looked like it was going to be a bad day, yet they dominated on the ground, especially on that left side, and they got the best of the Eagles' defensive line, because when you're looking at the Eagles, you're saying, well, if you can just get past that front four or front five they have up front on the line, you feel their linebackers can be had, especially with the passing game. They're a good tackling team, yet that's their weakness, is those linebackers. And the secondary has their flaws too. A couple of guys I have to give credit for, analysts coming this game who predicted this. I didn't see it coming. Larry Krueger was right. He called for a potential blowout, and also Dante Hittner. But by the way, the 49ers played also what was so good, and these are just takeaways at the end, was they took the crowd out. They took the crowd out of the game, and they just crushed the spirit of the Eagles and their fan base as they went on throughout the game. Okay, and I will talk about Greenlaw for a moment. That could have really costed them. They played the whole chunk of the third quarter and the fourth quarter without him, because he is the intimidator on that defense. And like I said, he's the one who lays the wood. He is the most physical player on defense, and thankfully didn't come back to hurt him. But that was so foolish. And there's no excuse for that. And the 49ers were up at that point. If I'm not mistaken, they were up 21-6. It's like, you're in control, you're winning, and you're doing everything right. And then you do a bonehead thing like that, and he's got to just be more disciplined. I mean, they need to get this guy straightened out, because he's a great player. He is. And he's a very important player, the 49ers. But, hitting someone on the sidelines as he did, whoever it is totally unacceptable and immature, and it's just losing it. I mean, he just lost it out there, and he's not a rookie. Even if you are a rookie, there's just no excuse for that on any level. And we got some hot heads here in the Bay Area with him and Draymond Green, but Draymond Green's worse. I mean, Greenlaw, this was unacceptable, but for a guy in his 30s, someone like Draymond Green, I mean, grow up is all you can say. Because you need that guy. You really need him, and pair him up with Fred Warner. And that's what makes the middle of the 49ers defense so good. As you can get to that second level on the Eagles defense. The second level in the 49ers defense is second to none with the linebackers. I have to give credit to both the offense and defensive adjustments, and say what you want about Steve Wilks being on the sideline. I think it's helped. I do think it helps with communication, having the coach there. And then to say this too, what impressive back-to-back wins for 49ers. I mean, the Seahawks aren't what they used to be in Seattle, but that is still one of the hardest outdoor stadiums, just stadiums period, to play in on the road, prime time. And the 49ers, I felt they had their B game against the Seahawks, but today, after the slow start, they had their A game. And they needed it. I was saying they have to play better than they did against the Seahawks to beat the Eagles, and they did. They played up to the best of their abilities today, and they needed it for the competition they were playing. Maybe they still would have won with a B-plus game, but to win these back-to-back places, and when you're looking at the schedule at the start of the year, you're like, woo, Seahawks, at Seattle, at Philadelphia, that is rough. And then you got to play the Seahawks again. And I admit, I assumed the Seahawks were going to be a little better. You look at their roster, they're worse. They're playing worse than they did last year. Definitely worse. I mean, maybe we saw the best of Geno Smith last year. Probably did. But to win in Seattle, in Philadelphia, on the road, back-to-back weeks, those are, I would say, are as difficult as any two places you could play on the road back-to-back. It's one of the greatest regular season wins for me as a 49er fan, because they couldn't do it against Green Bay in the Favre era. They couldn't do it in 12 or 13 against the Seahawks. And it was a great revenge game. This was great. Oh, and let me give some credit to Jake Moody, too. The special teams, okay, Ronnie Bell fumbled that ball and thankfully went out of bounds on the punt return, but they even had Debo. And I don't know how crazy I am about Debo returning kicks, but both Wishnowsky, as usual, great, and Moody didn't really have to settle for field goals. I mean, that's the thing. They were scoring touchdowns, but he was good on all the extra points. And my confidence is growing with him. As the season goes on, my confidence is growing in Jake Moody. And where does this leave the 49ers? And where does this leave the Eagles? I'll start with the Eagles first. They're still the number one seed. They have a tough game against the Cowboys next week. They may lose that. I could very well see them winning the rest of their schedule. I said a number of times I felt the 49ers had no chance at the top seed. I felt it was forfeited because there was a good chance they'd lose this game. Well, things are looking different now. I mean, when you're looking at the teams in the NFC, the 49ers are without doubt the best team now. And they should be seen as the number one team in the NFC, if not all football, because there are no great teams in the AFC. I mean, look at the Chiefs. We'll talk about that later on. The Chiefs lost to the Packers. And the Packers, I will say Jordan Love, I may take back some of the things I said about Jordan Love. But the Chiefs still lost to a team that came in at 5-6. Yes, it was in Green Bay. The Chiefs are looking very vulnerable right now, more than I can ever remember with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. That was a big loss for them. Big win for Green Bay. The Eagles still have the best record in the NFC. And my opinion about them is they're still a great football team, but they have been running on fumes for a while. You wonder about the health of Jalen Hurts. They're still right there at the top tier, and they still could get home field advantage. It is a very important game for them. The 49ers, they are the number 2 seed, and they have a great shot at running the table, though. I mean, it all depends. If the Cowboys can knock off the Eagles next week, then the 49ers are in a good position to get that first seed, because the toughest part of the 49ers schedule is over. The rest of the schedule, these are all winnable games. I mean, Seattle, you have Los Angeles Rams, you have the Cardinals. Who else am I missing here? The Cardinals, the Commanders, and the Ravens. Okay, the Ravens is the last tough game on the schedule. Hey, you beat the Eagles on the road. They're all different matchups, sure. I don't see why you can't beat the Ravens here. So, great day for the 49ers. Great day for the 49er fans. This was about as good of a win as you could have in Philadelphia. It's a day to celebrate. For the regular season, it's a day to celebrate. You got to keep on winning. 49ers are not about winning divisions. It's not about necessarily getting the first round by as much as you'd like to. The standard is Super Bowl. It's been a long time, but that's the expectation, and that's the goal. 42-19, 49ers defeat the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's time for Brock Purdy to get some respect.